He said, dear teacher, every time I see the Sangha moving, I have confidence in you. The Sangha is the masterpiece of the Buddha's work. The work of a Buddha is to build a Sangha. The Buddha knew that without a Sangha he cannot achieve the career of a Buddha. A Buddha without a Sangha cannot do much. A Buddha without a Sangha is like a musician without the music instrument. And that is why right after enlightenment, the Buddha went and searched for members of his Sangha. And at the end of the first year after enlightenment, he already built a monastic Sangha of more than 1,000 monks. In the first few years, there were only bhikshus, no bhikshunis. The Buddha spent a lot of time training the monks. He told the monk how to put on the sangati, how to hold the bowl, how to walk, how to breathe. So during the first year, he did not have elder disciples to help him train the monks. He had to do everything by himself. After he spent some time in the deer park, he went back to the village of Uruvela, where he converted nearly 1,000 men who worship fire. And the three Kashyapa brothers took refuge in the Buddha, and all his disciples also took refuge in the Buddha for the first time. He took all of them to the mountain of Gayashisha and teach them how to behave as a monk. And when the monks are well trained enough, he brought them to the city of Rajagraha for the first time to see the king Bimbisara. The Buddha was an excellent Sangha builder. Later on, he had disciples like Shariputra, Mahamukhalana to help him to train the monks. But in the beginning, he had to do everything by himself. When I was a young monk, my deepest dream is to build a nice Sangha with harmony and with brotherhood. It's quite difficult at that time because we were in a war with the French. And I also knew that without a Sangha, you cannot do much as a teacher. And that is why after we graduate from the Sangha University, the first thing we have to do is to try to build a Sangha. The Sangha is the continuation of the Buddha. If the Sangha is a real Sangha, a happy Sangha, a Sangha where there is mindfulness, concentration, insight, brotherhood, sisterhood, and then it is possible to see the Dharma and the Buddha inside of the Sangha. Sangha building is not something easy to do because the Buddha had a hard time building a Sangha also. During the time of the Buddha, the Sangha was split several times. And he tried his best in order to be patient, and with the help of people like Shariputra, they were able to unite the Sangha again. During the time I spent in the West sharing Buddhism, I always tell people that the that the safest place to look for the Buddha is in the Sangha. Because in the daily life, the monks, the nuns try to live in such a way that the energy of mindfulness, concentration, and insight must be present. And the living Sangha transports the living Dharma and the living Buddha. Every time a monk speak or look or walk, we can see the energy of peace, the energy of mindfulness, the energy of loving kindness, and that is a Dharma talk already. When a monk speaks, act, do things, he does it in such a way that people can recognize the Dharma in it, the living Dharma. The living Dharma is more important than the written Dharma or the spoken Dharma. And everything the monk or the nun does express the energy of mindfulness, concentration, and insight, and they offer the living Dharma to the people. And if the living Dharma is there in the Sangha, the living Buddha is also there in the Sangha. Sometimes we offer Westerners a kind of gonggan, like smile to the cloud in your tea. When you drink your tea mindfully with concentration, you see that there is a cloud in your tea. And while you are drinking your tea, you are drinking at the same time your cloud. So when looking into the tea, you can see your cloud, but not in the form of a cloud. We have learned in the Lotus Sutra, Saddhamma Pundarika Sutta, that the lifespan of a Buddha is limitless. A cloud can never die. A cloud can only become rain or snow or tea. So Buddha Shakyamuni also cannot die, can never die. And we have to recognize him in the new forms of his manifestation. Buddha Shakyamuni is accessible to us every moment of our daily life, only if we know how to get in touch with him. During the time of the Buddha, we already have the expression Dharma Body. And the expression Dharma Body only means the body of the teaching of the Buddha. One day the Buddha visited a monk who was dying, and he asked the monk, do you still regret anything? And Vakali said, dear teacher, I don't regret anything except one thing. I am so sick in these days, I do not have the capacity to go to the vulture peak in order to see you and to listen to you. And the Buddha said that, Vakali, my physical body is not important. You already have my Dharma body. There's no reason why you have to suffer and regret. And in the Mahayana tradition, you see that Dhammakaya, Dharma body, has acquired a much larger meaning. According to this teaching, the Buddha is always there, teaching, giving the teaching every 24 hours a day. If you don't hear the teaching, that's your fault. But the Buddha never stopped teaching. In the Mahayana Sutra, we learn that every flower, every bamboo, every leaf, every pebble is teaching the Lotus Sutra. If you know how to listen to this flower, you hear her preaching the teaching of impermanence, no self, no birth and no death. The same way is true with the golden moon and the white cloud. They are always teaching the Dharma of impermanence, non-self, no birth and no death. In the Amitabha Sutra, He said that every time the wind goes through the trees, if you know how to listen, you will hear the teaching of the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, 5 powers, and so on. And we know that we do not have to go to the West, to the Pure Land of the West, in order to listen to the Dharma talk of a flower. Right here on this planet Earth, if we have enough concentration and mindfulness, we can listen to the Dharma talks given by each pebble, each flower, each leaf. So Mahayana Buddhism helps us to see very deeply the teaching of original Buddhism. I believe that if in the Theravada tradition they learn the Mahayana Sutras, they will understand better and more deeply the teaching of the Buddha in the Theravada Sutras. I myself belong to Mahayana Buddhism, the Zen school of Linchi. But when I go back to the source of Buddhism, I discover many things that even in the tradition people do not see. It's true that all wonderful Mahayana ideas and teachings have their roots in the sutras of original Buddhism. In the Pali Canon, there are many sutras on emptiness, sunyata, but in that tradition they have not explored enough the teaching of emptiness. The teaching of the 3 doors of liberation, namely emptiness, signlessness, and aimlessness, exist also in Theravada Buddhism, but they have not been able to make good use of the teaching. And my view is that we who belong to the Mahayana tradition, we should from time to time go back to the source. And when we go back to the source, we will discover that all these wonderful Mahayana teachings have their seeds, have their roots in the original sutras. I think both traditions have to learn from each other. Mahayana has to learn from Theravada, and Theravada has to learn from Mahayana. I have been teaching the sutra on mindful breathing. People believe that sutra belongs to the Theravada tradition, but that is not correct, because in the Mahayana Tripitaka, in the northern school of Buddhism, the sutras on mindful breathing also exist. I have spent many years exploring the sutra on mindful breathing, and I have tried to understand the sutra on mindful breathing in the light of Mahayana Buddhism. And I have taught in many Theravada countries, but they do not teach the sutra on mindful breathing that way. In the Anapanasati Sutta, mindful breathing, the 5th exercise is to generate a feeling of joy, and the 6th one is to generate a feeling of happiness. Practitioners of Buddhist meditation have to nourish themselves, and if they do not know how to generate a feeling of joy, a feeling of happiness, they cannot nourish themselves. If you can generate the energy of mindfulness and concentration with your breathing, with your walking, you can create easily a moment of joy, a moment of happiness whenever you want to. And we know that in the Zen tradition, the joy, the happiness of the practice is the kind of daily food that we need. And that is why every Buddhist practitioner, whether she is a monastic or a lay person, they have to learn how to generate a feeling of joy, generate a feeling of happiness in order to nourish themselves. And eighth exercise of mindful breathing is to recognize the painful feeling, the painful emotion that you have in you. Breathing in, I'm aware of the painful feeling in me. Breathing out, I am aware of the painful emotion in me. So the seventh exercise is to recognize the suffering in you. And the eighth exercise is to embrace your suffering and calm it down. So with these four exercises of mindful breathing, the Buddha taught us how to be happy, how to create joy and happiness, and how to handle the suffering inside. And the third exercise is to go back to your body and connect with your body. And when you go back to your body, you might notice that there is stress, tension, pain in your body. That's why you need the fourth exercise in order to release the tension and minimize the pain in your body. In the Mahayana tradition, we have the tendency to look down on these sutras. And that is why in our studies and practice of Buddhism, we have to pay more attention to the basic sutras on practice, like the Satipatthana Sutta or the Anapanasati Sutta. In the first half of the 3rd century, there was a meditation teacher in my country, Vietnam, who described Anapanasati Sutta, the Sutra on mindful breathing, as Mahayana. And that is why I think it's very important for us in the Mahayana tradition to make good use of the sutras of meditation found in original Buddhism. When I was a young monk, I did not have the intention to ordain monastics and lay disciples. And I said that it's easier just to teach the disciples of other monks. Until I went to the West, and I realized that if there is no teacher-student relationship, and then the practice of these people cannot continue. They may get transformation, a lot of transformation and healing during the retreat, but after that they may lose what they have got because they do not have that kind of student-teacher relationship. And that is why after a while, especially in contact with practitioners in the West, I changed my idea and I began to accept, to ordain monastics and lay practitioners. In the last 30 years, I have ordained more than 800 monks and nuns. And I have transmitted the 5 precepts and the 3 refuges to countless people, hundreds of thousands of them. Sometimes 700 lay people take the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts at the same time, at the end of a retreat. I have had that privilege that I have never lost the connection with the younger generation. And that is why most of the monastics I ordained are very young. And in our tradition of plum village, monastics always live together. No one has the idea of having a private temple. We have helped establish several practice centers in Europe and America. And in these centers, there are hundreds of monks and nuns living together and organize retreats of mindfulness for the lay people right in the place, in the cities where we go and teach. You may be interested to know that none of us, no monastic has a private computer, a private telephone. No one has a salary. No one has a bank account. Of course, we have cars, we have computers, we have telephone, but that belong to the community. And if you are asked to do something, you have the right to make good use of the facilities that belong to the Sangha. In terms of spending money, buying things, we are not like people in the world, but we have a lot of happiness living together. We have organized retreats of mindfulness a little bit everywhere, America, or Europe, Australia, and so on. And our retreats are very well attended, 700, 800, 1,200. In order to take care of a retreat like that, you need many monastics, because the way the monastics walk and sit and smile and look is very important to help the practitioners to dwell in mindfulness. We try to conduct a retreat in such a way that every one of us monastics generate energy of joy, happiness, mindfulness, and peace, so that people can feel and have confidence in the practice. And the things we teach and practice in these retreats are very simple but very necessary for transformation and healing. First of all, we teach them to release the tension in the body. There are sessions of total relaxation led by a monk or a nun from the parking lot to the meditation hall or the dining hall. They learn to walk in such a way that every step can help them release the tension. We help them to get in touch with the wonders of life that are refreshing, healing, and nourishing, so that they can get the nourishment they need. And then we tell them how to breathe and walk, so that they can generate a feeling of joy and happiness. We help them to breathe and walk and sit in such a way that the practice remain pleasant. You don't have to suffer with the practice of sitting or walking or breathing. If you suffer during sitting or walking or breathing, your practice is not correct. And we also train them how to recognize a feeling of pain, a strong emotion that they can embrace and calm it down. We help them to recognize the suffering inside of them and help them to see the suffering in the other person. The other person may be the husband, the wife, the son, the daughter. And on the fifth day, we teach them how to make good use of the practice of compassionate listening and loving speech in order to help to restore communication with the other person. And the miracle of reconciliation always take place in our retreats. A father and mother can reconcile with each other, father and son, mother and daughter. If the other person is in the retreat, and then restoring communication and reconcile is easier. And usually on the fifth day, we want people to put into the practice that kind of practice in order to restore communication and reconcile. Even if the other person is not in the retreat, you are allowed to use your telephone to practice. And the young monastics follow their big brothers, their big sisters, accompany them in order to assist them, to help them organize these retreats. Not only we learn the sutra, the Abhidhamma, and so on, but we learn how to organize a retreat, how to organize a day of mindfulness, how to give a consultation so that the other person can get out of his or her difficulties. So the learning does not take place only in the classroom, but in the retreats. And we train the monks and the nuns to work together in such a way that harmony is possible, brotherhood and sisterhood is possible. Because when the practitioners, they saw the monastic working together in harmony, they have a lot of confidence. Usually during the first day or second day, you can see the suffering expressed in the face of the people who come. But on the fifth day or the sixth day, people are transformed, they are smiling, they are happy, they don't want to go home. So that kind of transformation and healing is the source of happiness for us, for monastics who organize the practice. The monastics, even the very young ones, see that in 5 days, in 6 days, they can make many people happy. And they know that they have the capacity, the power to make people happy. There are politicians who after 10 years or 15 years have not seen the fruit of their practice. But as monastics, we can see the effect, the fruit of the practice in just 4, 5, 6 days. There are 4 areas of monastic life: to study, to practice, to work together, and finally to play. Young monastics, they are a kind of students and they need to play. So in Plum Village we have a place to play soccer, basketball, volleyball, and table tennis. We teach monastics to play in such a way that during the time they play with each other, they can generate the feeling, the spirit of brotherhood, sisterhood. And while they play, they learn how to play beautifully and to generate more, to cultivate more brotherhood and sisterhood. That's why while playing, they can learn. They can also practice. And when we study, we learn, we conduct the classroom in such a way that there is a lot of joy and happiness during the time of learning. Even in a class of precepts, mindful manners, we teach in such a way that there is a brotherhood, sisterhood, joy and happiness during the class. In our practice center, we have to learn English, French, Germany, if you are in Germany, and then you have to learn Germany. And we have class of Pali and Chinese and Sanskrit, and we always try to make the classroom joyful. To be together, to learn more Chinese, to learn more French, is a very great joy. And that's why if you are a professor, a Dharma teacher, you have to transform your classroom into a joyful place in order to help the students to learn better. Monastics of Plum Village, when they learn Chinese, they laugh a lot. So in the category of learning, studying, you have the element of playing in it. And when you practice sitting or walking meditation, touching the earth, bowing, you practice in such a way that joy is always present. In Plum Village, you do not touch the earth 108 times. We only prostrate 3 or 4 times each session. Because every time we prostrate, we touch the earth. We want to make sure that insight, transformation and healing take place. when you are about to prostrate, you might visualize that all your ancestors are fully present in every cell of your body, and you are not prostrating as an individual. You prostrate as a lineage of ancestors, children and grandchildren. And during the time you touch the earth, you touch also the nature of no self. And when you touch down, you release all the tensions and you allow yourself to be embraced by Mother Earth 100%. We want to touch the earth very deeply. That is why we allow ourselves to be in that position for at least 3 long in-breaths and 3 long out-breaths. We want to make sure that every touching of the earth can help release the tension, help us getting in touch with Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, ancestors, getting the nourishment and healing. And that is why we do not care about how many touching the earth we do. We care that every touching of the earth will bring the fruit of the practice right away. In our practice centers, there is a day each week we call a lazy day. If you are used to be busy and then practicing a lazy day is difficult. We do not call it a rest day or something like that. We call it a lazy day because on that day you have to try to be as lazy as possible. And on your path, if you meet a brother, you might say, "Dear brother, are you lazy enough today?" And in Plum Village, we do a lot of work and mostly organize retreats and practice. And in the last 40 years, we have learned a lot from working together. Working together is an opportunity to build brotherhood, sisterhood. We know that for monastics, we only have that kind of love called brotherhood and sisterhood because we don't need romantic love. And if you can build brotherhood and sisterhood in the monastic community, that the brotherhood and sisterhood will nourish you all your life, and you can continue to be a monastic for the whole of your life. And in a practice, we also practice reciting the sutras, but we have translated the old sutra into modern Vietnamese, modern English. We have produced a new chanting book for the morning, for the evening, but all of the sutras in the chanting book are in modern language, so that the young people can understand right away what is in the sutra. And that chanting book of Plum Village has been translated in many languages, including Italian. We have an English version of the Heart Sutra in French, and we care that the translation should help people understand the teaching. And every time we learn a sutra like the Vimalakirti, the Lotus Sutra, Avatamsaka Sutra, we always ask the question, how should the teaching in these sutras help me to suffer less and to have more joy? The wonderful teaching can be uplifting, but you have to find ways in order to apply in your daily life for your transformation and healing. From time to time, we offer a Kung An, but in a new form, like a cloud never dies. When you look into a cloud deeply, you can touch the nature of no birth and no death of a cloud. And also, công án like no mud, no lotus. You cannot grow lotus flowers on marble. You need the mud. And that is why when you look deeply into the lotus flower, you see the mud in it. Without the mud, there's no lotus possible. When you look into a Buddha, you can see the suffering that has been transformed into compassion and understanding. The Buddha knows how to make good use of the suffering in order to create understanding and compassion. And that is why when you look into the first noble truth, dukkha, deeply, you can see the path leading to the transformation of suffering. Many of us tend to run away from suffering. They don't know that suffering is something helpful. A good practitioner knows how to make good use of suffering in order to create happiness, like a gardener can make good use of the mud in order to produce the lotus. The phrase, be beautiful, be yourself. You are beautiful when you know how to be fresh, how to relax, how to be compassionate. And you do not need plastic surgery in order to be beautiful. So these kungans are very close, very helpful to people of our society. It's easier for them than those a dog has Buddha nature. They come from many countries, not just from France. And